ready. So last week we started the series on foundations. The foundations of the kingdom. And we began where Jesus began, with the Beatitudes. The beautiful, disorienting picture of what it means to be blessed. To be poor in spirit, to mourn, to be meek, to hunger for righteousness. And if you were here, you remember these aren't just nice spiritual thoughts. We dove deep. They're not bumper sticker theology. They're a description of what it actually looks like to live under the reign and rule of God. To live in the kingdom. But here's where it all gets really interesting. Jesus didn't stop at the Beatitudes. Because formation without mission is narcissism. And mission without formation is just activism. I can't read my own notes this morning. It's great. Activision, the video game company. Just kidding. It's just activism. So immediately after describing what kingdom people are like in their character, in their interior world, Jesus tells them what kingdom people do. Or maybe better, what kingdom people are for in the world. He uses two of the most common, ordinary things in the ancient world to describe it. Salt and light. Before we read scripture this morning, I want you to imagine you're on that hillside. You just heard Jesus describe a completely upside down way of being human. Poor in spirit equals blessed. Mourning means blessed. This makes no sense to the world's logic. And you're sitting there maybe a little confused, maybe a little curious, maybe feeling something stirring in your soul that you can't quite name yet. And then Jesus looks at you, and says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Not you could be, or you should try to be. You are. So let's read it. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 20. Listen, it says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. That makes no sense. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, I love that word, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the word from the Lord. You are the salt of the earth. Now, we live in a world where salt is cheap. You can go to Walmart, right over here, and buy a container of Morton's for like $1. It's everywhere. We take it for granted. We put it on everything. But in the ancient world, salt was valuable. Like really valuable. In fact, the Romans had a saying, nothing is more useful than sun and salt. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid in salt. I think I would go a little sideways with that in my life personally. That's actually where we get the word salary from the Latin salarium. Right? There were salt routes across the empire, salt mines that were made cities wealthy, salt merchants who controlled trade. Why? Because in a world without refrigeration, salt was the only way to preserve meat and fish. Without salt, food would rot. Communities starved. Salt meant survival. But it wasn't just about preservation. Salt was also purified. It was used in temple sacrifices, mixed with offerings to symbolize covenant faithfulness. Leviticus 2:13 says, "Season all of your grain offerings with salt." You got it. Salt was part of everything. Do not leave the salt of the covenant your God out of your grain offerings. Add salt to all your offerings. Salt was so essential to covenant making that when enemies made peace, they would share bread and salt together. Sounds like quite the meal. To eat salt with someone meant you were bound to them. So when Jesus says you are the salt of the earth, his first century audience would have immediately understood you are essential. You are valuable. You are covenant people. But here's what's so important about that. Salt doesn't exist for itself. Salt exists to be used. You don't collect salt and put it on a shelf to admire it, except for that Himalayan pink salt, because it's pretty. Salt is for something. It's functional. It's meant to be dispersed into whatever's needing preserving, whatever is needing flavor, like Pastor Taylor likes to remind me. Jesus is saying in this verse that's you. That's what you are in the world. You, shaped by the Beatitudes, formed by the kingdom life of humility and mercy and peacemaking, you are meant to be dispersed into the world around you. Some of y'all just think it means to be salty, but no, there's more to it. You're supposed to be dispersed into your neighborhood, into your workplace, into your family, into the places of decay and corruption and blandness. And just by being there, living this different way based on the Beatitudes, you preserve, you flavor, you make things better, you slow the rot of the world, you bring out what's good, and you remind people what covenant faithfulness looks like. But then Jesus says something unsettling. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Now, scholars debate what Jesus means here. Pure sodium chloride can't technically lose its saltiness. But in the ancient world, salt was often mixed with other minerals, gypsum, limestone, various impurities, especially the salt from the Dead Sea. And over time, through exposure to moisture, the sodium chloride could leach out, leaving behind a white substance that looked like salt but had none of its properties. It was worthless. You couldn't use it to preserve food. You couldn't use it for the sacrifices. You couldn't use it even as fertilizer. It would kill plants. So people would literally throw it out into the street to be trampled underfoot. And Jesus says, if kingdom people stop being kingdom people, we lose our distinctiveness. If we just blend in with the culture around us, we become useless for our purpose. Think about it. What happens when the church just mirrors the anxiety of the world? What if we mirror the tribalism of the world, the outrage, the consumerism, which is overtaking the church, the hurry, the way we demonize people who disagree with us? We lose our salt. We become irrelevant, Not because we're not cool enough or relevant enough, but because we're not different enough. The world doesn't need Christians who are just slightly nicer versions of everyone else. And that's where we hang out right now. The world needs people who have actually been transformed by another king and another kingdom. People who are poor in spirit in a world of self-promotion, who mourn in a world that medicates every discomfort, who are meek in a world of power plays, who are hunger for righteousness in a world that's given up on goodness. That is salt. That's the preserving flavor, the covenant-keeping presence the world desperately needs. That's you and me. That's what happens when Jesus and the Beatitudes that we spoke of impact our lives. You see, and then Jesus switches metaphors. You are the light of the world. Now, this one's even bolder. We all understand light, right? But in Hebrew culture and in Scripture, God is the light of the world. Psalm 27 opens with, "The Lord is my light and my salvation." Isaiah prophesied that the Messiah would be a light to the Gentiles, bringing God's salvation to the ends of the earth. And in John's gospel, Jesus will say, "I am the light of the world." But here in Matthew 5, Jesus looks at this ragtag group of disciples, and that's what they were. His disciples were between the ages of 18 and 25. They were young men. They didn't have their lives together. Has anyone in here got their life together? Can we hang out if you do? I need to learn some things. But they were a rough group. They were fishermen, tax collectors. We all love those guys. Zealots. They were nobodies by Roman standards. And he says, you bunch of ruffians, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. You right here, right now. It's stunning. He's giving us the very language used for God himself. And then he makes this point that would have been so obvious to his first century audience. You don't light an oil lamp and then put a basket over it. You don't do that. That would be absurd, not to mention a fire hazard. I know fire hazards. And if you know me very well, you know that I know fire hazards. But in those small, one-room homes that they would have lived in, one lamp would illuminate the entire space. You'd put it on a lampstand, and everyone in the house could see it. Light, by its very nature, expels darkness. It reveals, it guides, it brings clarity. We all appreciated power and lights a few weeks ago, right? Especially when it wasn't there anymore. It makes life possible. You see, a town built on a hill cannot be hidden. I love that our church sits atop the hill, because when I'm at Walmart, I can look this way, and I see, especially at nighttime, the big illuminated sign. So we are a city set on a hill. And Jesus' audience would have known exactly what he was talking about when he said that too. When you're on that hillside in Galilee, you can see the town of Safed sitting on top of Mount Canaan. I forgot to put it in my notes. At night, you'd see the oil lamps of the whole town blazing. It's impossible to miss. A beacon. A beacon. That's what you are. You're a beacon in a dark place. Jesus says that you're to let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is so important. We're not called to shine a spotlight on ourselves. We're called to shine in such a way that people see our good deeds and glorify God. The Greek word here is kalos, not just morally good, but beautiful, attractive, compelling, the kind of good that makes people stop and pay attention. It's not about performance. It's not about posturing. It's about living such genuinely beautiful, loving lives that people can't help but wonder, what's different? What's different about them? What do they have that I don't? And the answer, of course, is Jesus. The kingdom. A different way of being human. I think about this a lot in our cultural moment. You see, Christians are often known more for what we're against than what we're for. More for our political opinions than our sacrificial love. More for our arguments than for our acts of mercy. And I wonder in those moments, is our light shining? In a world that is hurting, are we there shining light into dark places? Or have we put it under a basket of outrage? Under the basket of tribalism? Under the basket of us versus them thinking? See, Jesus says a city on a hill cannot be hidden. The question is, what kind of city are we? Are we a city that reflects the character of Jesus, the mercy, the justice, the radical hospitality, the enemy love, the forgiveness? Are we just another town with better music on Sunday mornings than the one next to us? Because here's the thing, people are watching. Your neighbors are watching. Your coworkers are watching. Your kids are watching. And they're not asking if you go to church or if you believe the right things about the Trinity. They're asking, does this Jesus thing actually work? Does it make people more loving, more whole, more alive? Your life is the answer to that question. Now, Jesus takes what seems to be a left turn in this moment with the disciples, but it's not. He's been building to this. He says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Okay, so we need to understand what's happening. Jesus has just spent the last few minutes completely redefining what it means to be blessed, what it means to be righteous, what it means to be the people of God. And his Jewish audience would have been thinking, wait, what about the Torah? What about Moses? What about the 613 commandments? Because for a first century Jew, the law wasn't just a legal code. It was identity. It was what separated Israel from the nations. It was how you knew you were part of God's covenant people. And here comes Jesus, this rabbi from Nazareth, teaching with authority, gathering disciples, and talking about a kingdom that sounds different. So the question hanging in the air, is Jesus a revolutionary? Is he throwing out the Torah? Is this a completely new religion? And Jesus is crystal clear. I'm not abolishing the law or the prophets. I'm fulfilling them. Now, what does that really mean? Most of us are like, well, I don't know what's going on. See, I think a lot of us read fulfill and think Jesus is just saying, I'm the Messiah who was prophesied. And yes, that's part of it. But I think it's so much deeper. To fulfill something means to bring it to its intended purpose, to completion, to its fullest, its truest expression. Think of it like this. An acorn is fulfilled when it becomes an oak tree. Not by ceasing to be an acorn, but by becoming what it was always meant to be. The law was always meant to point to something or someone. It was meant to reveal God's character and God's dream for human flourishing. It was meant to show us what life looks like when lived in alignment with reality, with the grain of the universe, with the way God designed things to work. You see, Deuteronomy 6:24 and 25 says, should be up there. There it is. The Lord commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear the Lord our God, so that we might always prosper and be kept alive, as is the case today, if we are careful to obey all this law before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us, that will be our righteousness. The law was about life, about flourishing, about right relationship with God and neighbor. But somewhere along the way, it became about rule keeping, about external compliance, about being good enough, about drawing lines between clean and unclean, the righteous and the sinner. The Pharisees had taken the 613 commands and expanded them into thousands of regulations. You couldn't carry a handkerchief on the Sabbath because that would be work. But you could sew it into your cloak because then it was clothing. You get the idea. And Jesus shows up and says, no, you've missed it. The law was always about the heart. It was always about love for God and love for your neighbor. So he's not abolishing it. He's going to show you what it was always meant to be. And then he says this absolutely wild thing. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. The smallest letter. The word used there is yod, the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, like our apostrophe or comma. And the least stroke of a pen is what differentiates one Hebrew letter from another. Kind of like the difference between our A or our B and our D in English. Jesus is saying every detail matters, down to the punctuation. This isn't throwaway stuff. And then, therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so Jesus is not loosening the standard. He's not watering it down. He's not saying grace means the law doesn't matter anymore. But watch what he does next, because this is where it gets really, really interesting. He says, for I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, hold on to that word, and the teachers of law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. You see, this would have been shocking to everyone there with him. The Pharisees were the most religious people around. They were the gold standard of righteousness, which means right living. They fasted twice a week. They tithed down to the mint leaves in their gardens. Jesus mentions this in Matthew 23. You see, they memorized massive portions of the Torah. They followed the rules meticulously. Their entire identity was built around being righteous according to the law. And Jesus says, not enough. It's not enough. Your righteousness has to surpass theirs. Now, if you're in that crowd, you're thinking, how in the world is this even possible? These guys have dedicated their entire lives to this. But that's exactly the point. Because external rule keeping will never produce internal transformation. The kingdom isn't about behavior modification. It's about heart transformation. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally, almost effortlessly, lives in alignment with God's good vision for the world. It's what Dallas Willard called the righteousness of the kingdom. Not earning your way in, but being transformed from the inside out, so that you actually become the kind of person Jesus describes in the Beatitudes. Poor in spirit, merciful, pure in heart, a peacemaker, That's the righteousness that surpasses the Pharisees. It's not about trying harder. It's about being transformed deeper. So let's bring this all together this morning. Last week we talked about the kingdom, what kingdom people are like, the Beatitudes, the inner formation. This week we're seeing what kingdom people are for, salt and light, the outward mission. And here's the connection. You can't be salt and light by trying harder to be salt and light. You become salt and light by becoming the kind of person Jesus described in the Beatitudes. By living under the reign of God. By letting Him transform your heart, your desires, your reflexes, your automatic responses. Formation leads to mission. Character produces influence in your life. And then almost as a byproduct, you'll find yourself as a preserving flavor. Illuminating the world around you. Not through grand gestures or heroic acts, though maybe sometimes, but through ordinary, daily rhythms of faithfulness. The way you treat your spouse when they're driving you crazy. The way you speak to your kids when you're exhausted. I'm crossing the line. The way you do your work even when no one's watching. Even when you don't feel like it. The way you respond when someone cuts you off in traffic. The way you love your difficult neighbor. The way you steward your money. The way you handle conflict by not winning, but by peacemaking. This is the stuff that people that are the salt and light do. And notice, Jesus doesn't say try to be salt and light. He says you are salt. You are light. It's your identity, your design, your purpose. The question is, are you living as who you were created to be? Or have you lost your saltiness? Hidden your light under the basket, waiting for your house to burn down? I want to close with a question and an invitation. Stephanie, if you would come play. The question this morning is, where has God placed you to be salt and light? Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your workplace, your neighborhood, your friend group, that hard relationship you keep trying to get out of. God hasn't placed you there by accident. You're there on a mission as salt and light. As a little outpost of the kingdom. A city on a hill. Not to fix everyone. Not to be the moral police. Not to win arguments. But simply to be different. To be a preserving, illuminating presence. To live in such a way that people see something beautiful and wonder where it comes from. And the invitation? To stop being someone else's salt and light. So stop trying to be someone else's salt and light. Stop comparing yourself to someone else. Stop comparing your influence to your neighbors. Stop wishing you had a different life, a different calling, a different set of circumstances. Stop waiting until you're more spiritual, more mature, or more ready. Jesus says, right where you are, in the mundane, ordinary, unglamorous places of your life, that you are salt. You are light. So this week, be it. Be present, be attentive, be different. Not weird, but genuinely, compellingly different. Because you're being shaped by Jesus and His kingdom. And trust that as you are faithful in the small things, in the ordinary things, the hidden things, that God will use your life to preserve, to flavor, to illuminate the world around you. One conversation at a time. One act of mercy at a time. One choice to be present instead of distracted. One choice to be generous instead of anxious. One choice to forgive instead of holding a grudge. This is how the kingdom comes. Not with thunder and lightning, but with salt and light. Would you stand with me today?